No video, right?
No, there's no video. It's only audio, and then got my cans on so I can hear what you're saying, hear how you're sounding, and just hope that it all comes out good. But yeah, other than that, just putting the weather stripping up and trying to keep all the critters out of here because I don't know what it's like. I think up in your part of town, there's like just a lot of potato bugs.
My daughter-in-law just freaks at potato. Just freaks. They are bad when you step on them though, and it's like just an exploding mass of crap.
Yeah.
They're they're nasty.
No, but down here it's crickets. And even before you showed up, I had to pull them all out and sweep them outside because they come in at night and then they don't make it the night.
We have crickets, but not so much in the house. Except the grandson has, I don't know, 3 or 4 different lizards and frogs and shit.
Yeah.
So they buy crickets, and 50% of what they throw in there get out. My wife is, she'll go to take a shower. Yeah, I got a cricket in there. And I'm like, stop it, for God's sakes. You're not bothered by this. I know it. Well, but I don't like it in the shower. Well, I understand, but, they go whoosh, right down the drain.
Yeah. Oh, man. Claudia actually called me last night. Our daughter woke up and she was crying, and then she calls me. She's like, "Get your slippers." I was like, "What's going on?" "There's a big spider." I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah. I guess." And I go and I turn the light on. It's just a big old cricket. And, I mean, still, it's the fact that it made it all the way back to our room.
Bug,
Yeah.
Yeah. I swear we got spiders in bed with us. I get bit all the time.
Yeah.
Were we on? We're not on, right? You'll warn me when we go.
No, I mean, we've been going.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That seems dumb.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to keep it candid. I don't have a list of questions for you. I mean, I could try to think of something like last minute, but Mary Jane told me to keep you busy all day. I was like, I don't know if I can.
Things we got to do here.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if I could do that. I mean, I got stuff to do too.
Yeah, no. And then I got to go find my car.
Yeah.
Well, I went to pick it up yesterday because it's dead. And
the Focus?
Yeah, you see, we went to get it, and apparently he never started it in the month and a half he had it.
Oh, okay.
It wouldn't start. And by that, I mean that's with all the little normal jumping and tracing and all this. It ain't going. And he tracked it down to a fuel pump, which, of course, is in the tank. And that turns out to be $680 worth of work.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, so you're telling me that because you didn't start the car for over a month that it died, it's going to cost me $680. Having done that, the original problem still isn't fixed, so I got a $680 broken car. And I said, we'll pick it up. So we went to do that yesterday, and he never showed up to work.
Really?
Now, that's unusual for him. I'm not particularly mad because he has a heart attack history.
Oh, okay.
I'm just concerned that if he croaks, I can't get my car back.
Yeah.
Some relative will clear it all out. I'll be left swinging. So, we'll see.
Yeah, I didn't know the Focus was out of commission.
It's been 2 months. It's not. It started out with brake lights blowing fuses. Every time you touch the brake, it goes pooch.
Jeez.
Now, back when I grew up, if I couldn't find the short, I just twist a wire around the brake light switch and run it back to the brake lights and say, "Hey, look, lights." But now you have all these systems that work off of it. You have your cruise control. When you tap the brakes, it shuts it off. You have your shifter that won't move until you touch the brakes, and it has to know that it's touching the brakes. All these little computer systems that might or might not be able to bypass.
Yeah. Well, I've got that issue in my car. It's not necessarily the brake light issue, but it tells me that check the front left headlight. It says it's out.
Huh.
It's not, but the sensor says it is. And not only that, but sometimes at random points in the day, usually when it's warm outside, the sunroof likes to crack itself open just on its own.
Just needs a vent.
Yeah. So that, I believe, is a $2,000 fix. Or I can just, when it's hot out, just jiggle the jiggle the sunroof.
That's where I'm going with it.
Yeah, I'm okay with jiggling it.
Yeah.
And then another thing is
It's not new.
Yeah. Now what is new is I'll hit the brake because it's a push to start car. It's not the old school put the key in and turn the ignition.
Oh, there's no key in the ignition.
Yeah, which is real crazy. I had to figure it out, like pulling the owner's manual out when the battery in my key died, how to start my car if I even could.
Right.
And I guess there's like maybe a sensor, a proximity sensor. You put that up to the steering wheel, and then it triggers. It allows you to start the car even if the battery's dead in the key. So now I'll put my foot on the brake, and it's supposed to say, okay, well, we recognize you're depressing the brake, and we'll go ahead and allow you to start the car. And sometimes it just doesn't work. So I hope like I never find myself with an axe murderer coming after me.
Yeah, and you want it to go.
Yeah, and I need to start my car because there's always that fumbling with the keys moment.
Well, it'd have to be a damn big axe murderer to get to you.
Yeah.
Not like me. I'm not going to outrun you. I'm just going to take you out.
Yeah.
Doing that.
Well, I mean, they don't really let people do that anymore, and that was a conversation I remember overhearing at work, as well as a video that I had seen on YouTube about the right to fix. I don't know if we had talked about it too, but how, well, back in the day or when you were a younger man, I would say that you probably still had TV repairmen.
Oh, absolutely.
And the handyman who would probably come by the house to fix the washer dryer.
Yeah.
Now
We didn't. We had the TV repairman only because there was one that was a friend of my father's.
okay.
But as far as appliance and stuff, no, that was self-done.
Oh, okay. I've cracked open the dryer once or twice to clean it and to try to fix it myself. It doesn't seem like a complex piece of machinery. Like I don't think much has changed unless you get the newest
newer
thing
crap
off the
is,
street. Yeah, it has like 2 tumblers and all this other crazy.
No.
If you get the classic, I mean, I think that's something that anybody with any.
Well, even if you don't, there's well, I'll start by saying that after we moved into this house, my son's family is death on that machinery. Absolutely just don't take care of anything.
Yeah.
Packed with lint and, let's have a 70-pound load. Can't even close the lid of the damn thing. Run it. Yeah, get it all one trip. So what I did is say, okay, son, the repair of the equipment is yours. And I stopped doing the repairs. And for a long time, what I did is I had purchased like $20 washer dryer, way used. And so if one crapped out, we threw the one in storage in there, and then he had to fix the one we pulled out.
Gotcha.
So we always had one on deck.
A backup dryer.
Yeah, I did. I had a stack of them outside.
Also, it makes sense then. The families that had dryers out in the front, they weren't just because they were junk. Those were spare parts or spare dryers. Okay.
Yeah. And he learned to fix it on like a lot of these websites, and one that comes to mind is a repair appliance.com or something.
Yeah.
But they not only sell you the parts, but there's a video how to change that part.
Oh, okay.
And how to decide that is the part. He used that a couple of times, and he's an expert. Like tearing the thing apart to put the belt on a dryer. Well, that's nothing anymore,
Yeah, I saw a video on how to do that. How to pretty much take the entire assembly apart. Yeah. Because we had an issue where it wasn't heating anymore. And I thought, okay, well.
Throw them a couple.
Yeah. I only had to pull the bottom off just
Yeah.
to verify. And when I did, I realized there's a lot of lint down here that doesn't get caught in the trap.
Right.
And I believe ours is an open flame.
Yep. They all are.
And it's like, this is a fire hazard just waiting to happen. Lint, I
It's
would
a
imagine.
blowtorch.
Yeah, lint, I would imagine, is probably the second most flammable substance on Earth.
The only thing you could do better than that is squirt a little lighter fluid on it.
Yeah, so this whole right to fix thing, it's just, you can't fix your TV now. If your TV is on the fritz, there's no one's fixing it. There's no tubes to change. There's nothing.
That's all gone.
So when your TV's down, you just have to buy a new one because that's the way that things have moved. And I mean, granted, new TVs now, they're pretty ridiculous. I don't want to spend $2,000 on a television, but for something this small right here, I mean, I think it's like $50, something like that.
Yeah. It's
So you can get a TV
quite frankly, they're way cheaper
to buy a new one.
than when I was a kid.
Well, yeah, big televisions that took a while to heat up or to boot up, like those things were thousands
First
of
of
dollars.
all, they weren't big televisions. Our first one didn't have a screen that big, literally, but it weighed about 350 pounds.
Jeez.
Now, the first one is a funny story because a good friend of my father's, and he didn't have a lot of friends, but a good friend of my father was a TV repairman, RCA. And I mean, I was maybe 8 years old before the first TV came in the house.
Wow.
And they existed. We just didn't have one.
Did you guys have one of those big radios? Listen to.
No, not a big radio. A little one, but not, a little countertop one. But
Yeah.
This guy, as part of a repair thing, the place he worked for, somebody purchased a new television. He went and traded out the one they had for this one. He brought it back to his place and put all new tubes in it and tuned it up, whatever the hell they might do in there, and brought it to us. And I remember a mile man at him, and this guy was short, but and they're carrying this thing in, and it was like, you're carrying a car. And it's about,
Yeah. They were big. They were pieces of furniture.
It was like that freezer there.
Yeah.
And the bottom stand and then a swivel. But it was the most magnificent woodwork you ever wanted to see.
Yeah.
And then they all had doors that closed because you don't want that ugly screen looking at you all the time, right?
That's changed.
With the theory that the television's only on for a show and then you turn it off and go about your business.
Yeah.
And of course, the ever-present, I had, I don't know how many at the time, at least 3. I ended up with 4 brothers. But we had to take turns holding the antenna to get the show in clear. So it depended on what show it was. And, we never needed a remote control because my parents had kids. Channel 6.
So your TV didn't come with a remote? And even if it did, wouldn't it?
It didn't come. It was.
Oh, yeah, those older ones, they didn't. They didn't until, was it the 80s? Was when they got remotes.
Yeah.
And I think they tried to make it to where families.
To begin with, it was remote on a wire.
Yeah.
You snaked a wire across the room. Push the button next to your chair. That was a big improvement. But, and then color. Oh, my God, we didn't get that till, I don't even remember, 60. Well, my parents didn't get a color TV until I went into service. So that was like 71. But a grandfather died, left him a couple bucks. They bought a new TV.
Jeez.
That was a big deal. But
yeah, I remember. I think in AG there's still like a computer repair store,
there is.
and that's about all we've got for repairmen. For regular home
You're missing
appliances.
one. He runs around here all the time in Napomo.
Is another repairman?
Yeah, there's a repairman running around here all the time. It's 911. His name is Juan. I think it's a spectacular name.
Yeah.
My neighbor uses them. He's a
handyman?
Runs apartments, but he does computer spreadsheets and stuff for his job.
Oh, okay.
self-employed, and this guy's over there fairly regular, straightening stuff out or updating or what have you. But he's a frequent flyer. I always got, first time I saw it, I said, now that's clever. I like that. I'd never come up with stuff like that. You know,
Yeah.
it's not my forte.
And I guess that there's a, now you would think that there shouldn't be, but there's a movement for people who want the right to repair their stuff. You can't even change the oil on my car. I purchased all the things. I figured an oil change for that car runs me like $100.
Right.
And it's like, well, I could just do it myself.
Right,
I had
20
done
bucks.
it. Yeah, I done it on my old Honda. Just pull that drain plug, change out the filter, and you're good
Why
to go.
can't you change that?
They put a rubber drain plug in it that needs to be taken out with a little hook and grabber. And then you have to have a new specialty drain plug that just kind of pops right in. It's not your standard unscrew it drain plugs anymore. And some of the new cars, they're making them in ways with which people can't.
A lot of them have pans over the whole thing that you can't get off.
Yeah. And even, well, this whole right to movement community kind of, at least the video that I saw, circles around cell phones and how, well, at least with my phone, you can't open it and change the battery. And there was a whole huge hubbub. I don't know if you heard about it when iPhone, everyone always had this conspiracy theory that every time a new phone was coming out, I feel like they slow my phone down so the new phone looks
Right,
faster.
right, yeah.
Well, that was actually happening.
Yes.
They weren't doing it like with an update,
Same
but
with your home internet.
yeah, how they were doing it was as your battery began to, you have a duty cycle on your battery. It can only be recharged so many times and then retain that charge. So over time, because it wouldn't retain the charge, the phone then modified its power consumption by slowing itself down so that you would still retain a good battery life, but at the cost of your phone's speed. And they didn't tell people this. So people thought my phone is slow, I'll just go get a new one, rather than spend $30 to take it to Apple. Yeah, put a new battery in there for me. And there was a huge thing about it. And Apple was like trying to tuck tail. And they're like, okay, well, if you bought your iPhone between this year and this year, we'll replace your battery for free. And
Right.
I did that. I went in and was like, you guys give me a new battery. This is ridiculous. I'm not spending another $1,000, $2,000 for a new phone.
Yeah, I about choked when I bought this one. Come
I
on.
bet. I mean, from going from a flip phone to
Yeah.
plasma TV in your pocket.
Even though I'm not cutting edge technology by any stretch of the imagination, given my wife's employment, I've had this same cell phone number since like 95.
Really?
Yeah. And that's why I keep saying I'm not changing it. I'm not smart enough to remember a second phone number. That's not going to happen. I got to keep this. Still Orange County.
Oh, gee.
You notice the 714 area code when you call me. It's Orange County.
Oh, well, that's what's crazy too, is I don't recognize because, with cell phones and no longer needing phone books or having to dial one when you're dialing out of your community or out of the
Right.
state, I don't really recognize, unless the phone tells me where the numbers are from.
Right. Yeah, sometimes it's like San Diego or whatever.
Yeah.
But for me, that was a whole different thing, was my wife knew all of them. Period. Well, she started out, we joke about our machinery. She started out on corded operator stations.
Really?
Lily
Doing the
Tomlin.
switchboard?
Yeah, Lily Tomlin. She ran those things.
Man, I wonder how a day like that was.
Busy.
A day at work, and what did the switchboard cover? Like a certain area, or were you given like a certain amount of cables interconnecting? Like, how did that work?
I don't honestly know. You'll have to get my wife in here
Yeah,
and
that
sit her
would-
down.
Because I've seen there's a show on Amazon, the Modern Mrs. Mavel, and she worked switchboard. At least in the very first episode, she's like moving through the switchboard, and I was always kind of curious like how that worked. I figured like one cable per person, and you would just connect them to that person. But then it's almost like it was so new back in the day. Maybe you had a series of numbers, and it's like you just have to put these cables in this sequence and it'll connect those two people together.
Right.
But then how many calls can you connect? Or would you have to wait until that call ended? Was there an indicator light?
No, there was no, not generally a backup.
Yeah.
But having said that, I mean, if you go back to like history, this was called a switchboard, right?
Yeah.
So when they started getting away from the actual pull the wire and stick it in garbage, what ran it then was what they called switches. And that's why there were so many of these huge AT&T buildings. It was all a huge computer.
Mm.
Even the ones that had tubes, they were still computers.
Yeah.
And then the girls would be at a keyboard doing that.
Doing the switching, but on a
But on
computer
a
now.
keyboard thing. And it was funny. One time, one of our rare vacations, we went to Disneyland when we lived in Chicago. We come out here, and Disney had a display of AT&T. They were showing you the difference between the rotary dial phone and the new push button.
Was it Tomorrowland or something?
Yeah, exactly. It was. And but it was an AT&T commercial,
Yeah.
So we're going in there. Obviously, my wife said, "I want to see this." So you go in, and on the wall they have, the rotary and then the push button. And it's like, "Oh, see this, and it was whatever 45 seconds to dial the phone or something. And then there was the new modern push button thing. And these were both hooked up to this really accurate digital timer. And my wife was kind of snickering, went over. Well, let's see what the push button does. Now, watching her hand on a keyboard for the phone numbers is like a good typist. You really don't even see those fingers hitting it.
Yeah.
And so the girl, there was a little girl running the display and, oh, yeah, you need to upgrade and stuff. My wife goes over and says, let's see how this works. And it from the first button to the last, they timed it. And she hit that thing and it didn't register.
Really?
And the girl's like, what? My wife said, well, that wasn't bad, 0.0001 second or something. and it was way under a second. And the girl's like, okay, reset. Let's try it. What the hell? I'm dying of laughter. My son, who is like, I don't know, like Joseph's age,
Yeah.
he even understood what happened. And his poor girl's face was just precious.
Oh,
And
man.
finally, my wife said, I work for the phone company. Oh, I do this about 4 trillion times a day.
Yeah. That's got to keep you pretty busy, especially with those numbers.
Well, one thing with the computers, for the operator, they used to track time on a call.
Oh, okay.
And they also wanted you to upsell, just like everybody else.
Yeah.
You're supposed to, hey, you want the new service and stuff, But, yeah.
So she's seen a whole lot change then over the years. I mean, as of you, your stories about belt-driven machines.
Oh, yeah, my favorite.
From I don't remember if you told me how they run though. Like, what was the drive on the outside? What was the power unit? Because I saw a video, another one that was like the biggest saw in the world, and it's like out there wherever they saw wood.
And that was probably a water wheel then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It like goes out into the river to cool the blade, and then it loops up on some telephone poles all the way back into the saw house.
Yeah.
And it's just cutting wood all day.
Yep. Yeah, and they don't slow down. The one where I worked, there was a main jack shaft, a big belt. By big belt, I mean 4 or 5 inches wide and thick.
Leather belts.
All leather, yeah. And, I shouldn't say that. They started out leather, but they came out with composite stuffs where they had layers of leather, plastic.
Okay, so they last longer.
Yeah, they were upgrading. I don't know that it was an upgrade, but they didn't stretch as much. Was when it got hot day, you were cutting a half-inch of belt out of it. You had to take it all down, cut it, relace it, put it back up. But one, I want to say 5 or 7 horsepower motor ran the whole length jack shaft. And for us, it was basically 5 machines on a shaft.
Wow.
Now, it helped itself in that you've got 5 machines running, and this one might be hogging out a lot of metal, and this one's just drilling a hole in brass. But the combined momentum helped this one keep going at the right speed.
Gotcha.
It was just inertia. It was like a big flywheel is all it is.
So once it got up to speed, the weight of the actual drive shaft itself
Yeah.
also helped keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, there was
Were your spindles always spinning, or were the clutches?
oh no, they weren't always spinning. And then there was a shifter, what you called, and it one was freewheeling, and then when you pulled that over, it scooted the belt over to the next pulley that wasn't freewheeling.
Oh, okay.
So the one freewheeling was just spinning on the shaft loosely.
How did that? I'm trying to envision it. How would you change the feeds and speeds? Was it through gears on the machine itself, or were there different
The
ratios?
feeds were changed, not like what you think. For my machines, what you call today a programmer, now it's called layout, or then it was called layout. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He would lay out the job. The trickiest one is taps and threads. You had to nail the feeds on that. So you come up with a time, a cycle time, and what the correct spindle speed should be for that material, diameter, blah, blah, just like we do now.
Yeah.
But the machine only had so many speeds. On the Brownies, like 6-step pulleys, you move the belts to different places. There's cone of pulleys and a reversed one over there. So started out on the jack shaft with a big pulley and then a small one on the machine, which that was up there. Then there was a drive belt from that down to the machine. There were 2 drive belts for spindle speed. You could either have 2 the same direction or opposite directions, which would be tapping.
Gotcha.
If you were just threading with a die, and when it got in after the thread and the die head pops open, then it was the same direction. If you were tapping, then the entire job had to be run left-handed. All the drills, all the tools, cutoffs, all that had to be made left-handed because the tap was certainly going in right-handed.
So
Then when you hit the bottom, it reversed that spindle and the cam started dropping back down. So you had to time when there's a dog tripping a lever
yeah.
that said
Wow.
at that point you had to tell the machine, okay, now back up. Now, who knows how many billions of taps were broken until you got it running right.
Yeah.
Or if a belt slipped, whatever. It didn't take anything to break a tap.
Even today, taps are breaking all the
yeah.
time. Just tiny little chip on the tap or a little burr in the hole.
Well, quite frankly, what we do over here is just dead wrong.
So then how long would an average setup take? Because, I mean, on a part for me in just our modern machining, depending on the intricacy of the part and the operation, I mean, it seems like 2 hours max and 30 minutes minimum.
It could be 3 to 5 hours, depending on the complexity of the. I mean, if you're just making a bushing, you got to cut off a form and drill it, drop it. You know that could be a couple hours, and it could be over 5 hours if it was a hairy job.
Yeah.
But some of the parts we make on the screw machines were really complex. And you look at it now and say, well, we can't even run this on the Maury, but you used to run it on the Brown and Shar. But literally, the only thing that limited you was your imagination as to how to get it done.
Yeah.
So that's why I crack up at the engineers. Any screw machine guy did more engineering in an afternoon than our boys do their lifetime.
Jeez.
They don't think about how to get it done and do it,
Yeah.
which is engineering. And these are people who, you know, not all college grads by any stretch. It's the kids in school that weren't going to college. But they turn around and have to use their imagination, and they're actually way more creative than the guys that did.
Well, and I think that that's just by a default when you're on the floor working with the material in your hands. You obviously, as human nature, we're all trying to find the fastest or the laziest way
Right,
to get
yes.
something done. And that's the thing, like I see when it comes to someone who, even when I was welding, there's always the architect or the who is it, the inspector or somebody. They're like, well, it worked on the computer. It works on the prints.
Yeah.
But when you're out in the field and you're looking up and it's like, hey, well, you see that big 2x4 that's in my way?
Yeah.
I can't put this where that print says it's supposed to go.
Right.
And we've set up this system of this hierarchy of pay grade scales where it's like, well, it's of your pay grade to tell me what to do, not just tell me it goes there because it's on the print. I can't make the decision to go hacking up stuff.
Yeah. I
and do
can't
these
cut that
things.
off.
Yeah. And were there many people from like school that were coming through into your shop at the time? Because it's a trade position. It's a trained, like a kid comes off the street. I want to be a machinist. And it's like, well, pay your dues, sweep that floor, do whatever you got to do.
yeah,
And maybe
exactly.
you'll find someone who'll take you under their wing and show you a thing
It
or
was
two.
all called OJT, you know, officially, but unofficially, it was just you learned from the old guy.
Yeah.
And the old guy didn't particularly want to tell you. The reason being is he felt that if he told you about it, then you'd work cheaper than him and they'd get rid of him.
Yeah.
So they were all worried about, our machines are what they call cam driven. I don't know if you know what that is or not. They're just steel discs and they're cut. You were talking about the feeds. The rate of the hills and valleys on this cam is what determine the feed. Having said that, if you have a job, you're making bushing 32, that's stamped on there. Your spindle speeds are stamped. Your time is stamped. Our guy wouldn't stamp it. He wouldn't give it serial number 2. It wouldn't go on rack 4. He did none of that because he knew he could take his scale, go along and say, oh, yeah, this was what I used to do that. But none of the rest of us knew what the heck that was.
Just retaining that information
So
for
my
himself.
father and I, he'd been there since, 1930 or something. And as we went along with jobs, we were always etching names and stuff onto the cams, and he'd be, because that meant, we could find the cam then. He didn't want that. He wanted to be the one that distributed. Well, it's not your company, dude. You're working for them. Here's how we're going to do it.
Yeah. And that system, I think you come across individuals like that even now. There's been places that I've worked where it's like you can't get something done because the one guy who knows where the one tool is hidden underneath something
in his toolbox.
Yeah. And it's like it's either not on the setup sheet, it's not obvious as to what you need to do. And I think that what maybe they don't understand is how much more harm it does to the bottom line, because you're all playing on the same team. You're all trying to achieve the same goal of getting stuff
They don't
out.
really think about that. Man.
Yeah.
And like toolboxes. At my old man's shop, I didn't have a tool bag. I had a baking pan with a handful of wrenches in. All of our brownies had been purchased brand new, and brownies come with tools. And every machine still had its tools. There were slots for them on the machine. you went to set a job up. I took this little pan with, and then every 2 machines had a micrometer. They were just on each machine.
Yeah.
And then if you needed something different, like a 3-inch or 4-inch, then we had a cabinet with the different mics in them. Like that one I showed you, the 6 to 12-inch micrometer.
Oh, geez. Yeah. that's a big one.
That's for a specific job. Most of those extensions were not used ever. The parts we bought that for were this long, and that never changed. That's the only piece you ever used. So, now we lost it again. But no, as far as my own tools, you had that little thing, you had a hammer, you had a handful of pieces of brass.
Yeah.
Because you don't use the hammer on the machine, you put brass between the hammer and the machine.
Yeah, something a lot of people don't know. A lot of young folks.
And a lot of our machines were painted a certain way in order to regulate during World War II. The War Resources Board, I believe it was, I don't remember if that was the exact name, they put a tag on the machine, and the machine had to be painted a certain way. Had nothing to do with parts. It was just a way to regulate. And if you had that tag on there, you were authorized to make war parts. It was like, get on with it.
Yeah.
But
I don't know why you would not have to paint it a certain way, maybe to visually see.
That was just one way to regulate your little butts.
So did you guys churn out parts for war? Were
Absolutely, yeah.
You were able to get military contracts and stuff like that? Or was it not?
I don't know that it was Army, Navy, Marines that gave you the contract.
Yeah.
Certainly we didn't do work for Boeing, but to say Boeing was making an airplane, Boeing would call up and say, here's a print, make some of these.
Gotcha. So they would probably have the contract and then you would just be a sub.
We're just, so far down. And we're a job shop. Most of the time, unlike here, we didn't know where these parts were going.
Yeah.
During the war stuff, which we're talking about World War II.
I know.
Yeah.
that was
a while
ago.
Before me. I'm not that damn old. I think they're all but dead now.
Yeah.
I'm a result of that.
Yeah.
So, but I remember our shop, there was a room in the basement, probably as big as this section we're sitting in here, not the whole garage, but a bay.
Okay.
18 feet high. It was all walls like pressboard stuff, but they didn't have pressboard there, but it was cheap garbage.
Yeah.
And those cheap brass window curtain rods, real thin brass? This room was stuffed literally to the rafters with those, 4 feet long, give or take. And in the war, they made parts. Well, they had this supply. We didn't buy it. I say we, long before me, Grandpa. It was provided by whoever we're making the things for, and they were cutting them off into something, bushings, spacers, whatever the hell. Maybe electrical crimps when you slide them on and stamp it and crimp the wires together. But they were so fanatical back then with their accounting that every year you did inventory. Every year we had to take all of this out of this room, put it on the scale, weigh it, and then I had to reinstall it in the room.
Oh, geez.
And I'm like, Dad, what the hell are we doing? Oh, we got to keep track of this. Where did it come from? Oh, it was provided us. I said, so it's not on. You guys are doing this. You're paying taxes on this pile that you don't own. We got to weigh it every year. It's a 4-hour job to weigh this.
Oh, geez.
Why don't you just, A, take last year's number What if it changed? I said, did you use it? I'm guessing it didn't gain weight. Oh, yeah, I don't know why we do that. Grandpa said to do it, and we just always did. Why is Grandpa carrying it on the books?
Yeah.
And then he actually took my suggestion, which shocked me. Kid, you don't make suggestions. And he said, yeah, you're right. 8,200 pounds. Here we go. Let's say 4 hours right out of the box every year. And that's what we did between Christmas and New Year's at the shop is
Oh, okay.
do this. So then as we went on and I found out that, this stuff it's still on whoever the hell owns it. We didn't own it. Why are you doing anything with it?
Yeah.
So just scrap it out. We didn't move it. We just, on the books, it's scrapped. It's still down in the basement today, so far as I know.
Jeez.
I know it's not, was when they moved the shop, they got rid of it. But, and over the years, I used 20 of them for curtain rods in the house. It's too cheap to buy anything. Here, we got a curtain rod. Here you go, cut it off.
That's what's pretty interesting about like military work that I got a glimpse into when I was working in Southern California, talking to an old timer who was a TIG welder. And he had told me that he was working in a shop where at either the end of the day or it was at random or it was periodically throughout the day. I can't remember the specifics, but they were working with a material that required a military official to see you dispose of and know that you disposed of it. They knew how much weight you would get from a finished part, and they knew how much weight the scrap should be. And if any of it was missing, that was going to be a big problem.
Yeah.
For whatever this material was. For all I know, it was like some foreign...
It wasn't gold.
Yeah, extraterrestrial material
Yeah.
that they were making stuff with. But again, these guys didn't know where these parts were going or what they were for.
Guys that were welding and the nuclear plant over there, they're stick welding.
Mm-hmm. Still, yeah.
And to get a new rod, they have to take the tip of what's left of their rod and trade that in for a new rod. And you were only allowed so many. And come on, who cares? Buy a case and let's go. But that's not how it worked. They had to count it. They had to control something.
Even punching into rooms. You and I could be walking, say, to the lunchroom, but if there's a key to pass, I have to scan, go through the door. Then you have to scan, go through the door. You can't just one guy scan and everyone walk. That was another thing that I had heard from a welding inspector who went out to Diablo a couple times to check out what they were doing. And, it was actually when I was learning to weld out at the community college. And the instructor was telling us how we needed to use all of the rod all the way down to the tip. Don't waste any. And one of the kids, decided to read the tin and said, hey, there's an amount of time that this can be out of the heater before I have to scrap it.
Right.
He's like, yeah, there is, but we're not doing that. They do that out at Diablo, though.
Yeah.
If you take more than you can use in that allotted time, you have to throw whole rods away. And we were like, well, why don't we get that rod then from Diablo that they don't use and have it here at the school so we can practice? That would be a huge thing. They'd probably be able to fund the entire welding.
That's correct.
And he's like, the way that they do things, they actually put it in a barrel and they bury it. No one can use it.
Yeah.
It's like, what a waste that is.
Well, yeah, everything done over there is a waste.
Yeah, when it becomes like big government or big contract type things, it's funny how much waste there is, but I also can kind of respect it in the sense that maybe they're supposed to be doing it to a higher standard, even though the regular guy might be like, I'm 10 minutes over my time on this expired rod, I'm still going to use it.
That goes to, look, when I was in the service, we used to joke because to get a ball peen hammer required God knows how much paperwork. And they cost, you know darn well you could go over to Ace Hardware. Yeah, that one there, that's good. But for the military, you can't just go out and buy a ball peen hammer. There's maybe a 60-page manual on dimensions as to what that's got to be, and the arc of the face, and the hammer, and what's it made out of, and how's it held to the head, and just gobs of garbage that not just so much making it to that, but the inspection to prove that it matches that thing. It's insane.
Yeah.
There's no way they can just say, "I'll get a ball peen hammer." Well, anything might happen then, So they're really hamstrung.
And even now, more so with the fact that I think it was after the space shuttle explosion or rocket launch explosion that they then introduced is it the AS099? There's like some spec that now if you're doing work for government contracts or aerospace, you have to meet this standard. And it pretty much is a paperwork standard.
Right.
So now, rather than churning out parts and taking a QC, and I don't know what the QC used to look like back then, but I know that on the floor at the machine is like you would have to check one every 5, and you would have a paper that you would have to write the dimension in.
That one, I think, was called SPC.
Yeah, and then
Statistical Process Control.
And then when it got into QC, because I was able to move my way in there for air conditioning purposes, because it was hot in Southern California, I didn't want to be in the shop. That was my sole purpose for
Come on.
I was like, I can measure parts in some in an air conditioned room when it's like 100 degrees outside, and checking one out of every 50, or one out of every 10, and whatever the percentages were, and they would have to meet that standard too. And the amount of paperwork and the amount of wasted paperwork. If I made a mistake on a piece of paper, you couldn't just white it out, scratch it out.
Yeah,
you had to get a brand new sheet printed. And it couldn't be back to back. You couldn't reuse the back of another sheet of paper. So there was so much waste.
Oh, exactly, yeah. Well, now, of course, the computers eat it all.
I know.
Enter it in the computer.
It was wild. But you've probably definitely seen more change over the years. And I'm interested to see what kind of change there's going to be in the industry. Because from going from belt-driven machines off of the ceiling to now full-on CNC machines with spindle warm-up programs and all this other stuff.
Yeah. Well, we used to warm up the brownies back in the day, especially when you go in the morning and you didn't leave the heat run at night. So when you went in to take your first one in the morning, you had to crack the ice off the top of the toilet so it had.
Oh, geez. Yeah,
it got cold in there at times.
I don't think Chicago would have fared well for me.
But in the other end of it, August in Chicago, 100 degrees, 100% humidity, the oil mist hanging in the air. A semi comes up with 3 6,000-pound bundles of material that you unload by hand. You didn't have a forklift.
Wow.
You reached over, you grabbed it, pulled it into the shop, laid it down. Depending on the size of the bar, it was how many you could grab. But while that was happening, you had to keep bars in your machines that were running over there. You didn't shut those off to go unload a truck. You ran over, made a couple trips of the material, ran over, put bar in your machine. Another guy over here had a second. He'd go unload the truck.
Did they have bar feeders back then, or how'd they feed
Brown
them?
and Sharps were automatically bar feeders.
Oh, okay.
It's mechanical, but yes.
Yeah, because you were telling me to deburr the whole open door while running. I don't even think you had a door, just an open machine.
There was a guard that came down. You usually depended on how you had the oil spraying, but
yeah.
But
you had to pretty much reach in there and do it.
Steel, diamond plate, and they were covered with about a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch of absorb oil. And then if there was a huge problem, then you cleaned up that area, or machine dripped or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But every week we swept the entire shop top to bottom and put down new oil dry.
Man.
That was probably half a 55-gallon drum of oil dry. went out in the garbage.
Jeez.
Well,
Yeah.
we had chip separator. So if the oil dry was ridiculously saturated from a spill or something, then we'd spin it into chip separator, get the oil out, and then dump the oil.
Oh, okay.
Because oil costs money.
Yeah.
Back in the machine it went.
Well, you guys weren't using like coolant. It was just
No, we only had one copper job we used that for, and like the operator, when they first started doing it, turned out to be way allergic. And they didn't realize what was causing his whole leg and blister up and carry,
Oh, geez.
including his crotch.
get pink eye from that.
And, you know, it was just, oh my God, he was out for a week. Nobody knew why, but it was the damn white water-based coolant. You didn't really want to use water-based coolant in brownies. They rust. You know, rust wasn't a big problem in the machine shop. Everything had a coating of oil on it.
Yeah.
Everything.
And that's probably why the machines still hold up today. I mean, they still look pretty good today when you come across an old one, because it was only ever used with oil.
Right.
But you see a machine, even like some of these new Bridgeports and these mills, and they using coolant, but the tables got rust or the spindles got rust after it's been sitting out for a couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, look at my machine. If I leave a part in the spindle overnight, I come back and the inside's rusted out. All kinds of rust on the inside of that.
Yeah.
That didn't happen with oil-based.
I wonder if they tried that on the first CNCs. If they tried running straight oil.
Yeah. And the place in L.A., they bought a couple of VFOs, and the salesperson provided the company with a list of what should be, and he had written down on there, use mineral-based oil. And the machines very quickly started having all kinds of cable problems. Haas came in and replaced it, did this, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't under warranty. You guys used mineral oil in here." And the owner at the time, and they're going, "Well, yeah, that's what you said." "No, we wouldn't say that." Well, they came up with the paperwork that their salesperson said, use this as a printed document. Here. This is why it's in there. Oh. And they went through and rewired all three machines at their cost.
Wow.
And then that's when they started using the coolant-based, the water-based. But yeah, they destroyed their own machines.
I'm sure it was a learning curve for them. Because when Haas was coming into the scene, like that was during your machining tenure, right? Like Gene Haas he was after you had already been a machinist, correct? Or was he already?
No, he didn't exist when I started working. No. Well, he existed, but I mean,
So
I don't know. I might be older than him. But it didn't, it's not, the plant wasn't where it is now.
Yeah.
And Haas wasn't their first CNC machine. I don't know the history of that company, but my boss purchased it, and it had been around 100 years already. It started out as a blacksmith shop in 1880 or so. And apparently that jack shaft I was talking about, the ones that they had, it was basically a Chevy motor in the middle of the floor with a pipe out the ceiling for the exhaust, and that ran the jack shaft. They'd come in and fill it full of gasoline, of course, That's what we used to use on my old man's place. There was a tin can, literally, a number 10 tin can with a coat hanger bent on it, hanging on each machine for cleaning the part. And someone, when I was a kid, it was me, would go down the street and come back with a gallon of gas, and you'd fill all these things up. Plus, you could smoke.
So you have a can of gas next
And
to your
at the
machine.
time, before oil dry, that was pretty recent innovation. We use sawdust. There's nothing like a gallon of gas, smoking, and sawdust to keep everybody on their toes.
Jeez.
But there was never a problem.
Yeah.
Only fire I remember was one of the ceiling motors, one of the main motors caught on fire up there. So it wasn't me. My father climbed the 18-foot ladder, 12-foot ladder, and went up there with the fire extinguisher and put it out.
We were talking about that, not you and I, but it'd come up about how back in the during the early industrial revolution in New York, you would see people having barrel fires in the shop, keeping warm. Mm-hmm. And it's not something that we do today.
Package scrapping and like all the stuff, the packing that the new machines came in. Yeah, you cut that up and burn it.
In your shop, would they have barrel
No,
fires?
we did not do that. We had an actual boiler, which was pretty cool. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Someone is asking me where I am.
Mary Jane?
Yeah.
She didn't remember.
The question is, where are you? I believe I covered that several times.
Yeah. Hey, you even got Patrick saying hello. I don't have you on video, but he's on the catching you live,
Patrick.
listening to you. Patrick, you remember Patrick?
Our welding dude,
yeah,
Patrick? Are you kidding?
yeah. I mean, I don't know if he's still in here, but
Morning, Patrick. But
oh, there you go. Best guest you've ever had. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's about time we had Marty come through.
But yeah, I mean that whole and then eventually the fire department came in and said, "You really need to start using the absorb oil here." But it was just how it was done, and I mean,
Yeah.
it sounds stupid today, but we never thought anything of it.
Yeah.
I never like unloading those trucks. You didn't think that's just how it was done. You just did it. You didn't. Oh, why don't we have a forklift? Well, you didn't.
Yeah. Safety and all this other stuff, I think, came later as things started happening in other people's shops.
Injuries and stuff. Yeah, you cut yourself all the time, but not go to the doctor. It was, just bandage it and.
Well, that was actually a really wild one I was going to bring up to you. I saw it last night. I don't know if it happened a while ago, but apparently there was a call in from the Amazon factory or distribution center out there somewhere where it snows, and they send a safety regulator out to go kind of just make an assessment and file a report. And apparently there was a maintenance guy who was doing maintenance on a forklift. And these are one of the forklifts that people can just stand in, and then you get jacked up on the lift, kind of like our combis. Not the combi, but the wave, kind of like that. But
Right.
this is an
you
actual.
go with the load.
Yeah, this was an actual forklift,
Right.
and unfortunately, not speaking anything ill against the guy, but he decided to work directly underneath it with the forks fully extended all the way to the maximum height that they can go, because that probably allowed him to do the work that he needed to do. Sure enough, forks come crashing down. 2 hours pass, I believe, before any coworker sees that he's under there. But by then, it was too late.
Well, yeah, I guess, yeah.
And the
He
guy
screamed to death by then.
Yeah, the guy who was doing his report, there was a big painted bright red bar that's used to just jam up under the fork. If you're working under it, you gotta what's it called? Block. Like when you're working under a car, you gotta put blocks under it.
Right.
Just rely on the jack.
Well, you never rely on hydraulics.
So he files his report and they fine him. I think it's like, when you look at a company like Amazon, it's pennies on the dollar. I think it was like $27,000 in fines.
Yeah.
And then they even told them that they can work on a way for things that they can change and implement training wise, or maybe posters that they can put up, and drop those fines down a little bit.
Yeah.
But they ended up, his superior ended up calling him in and is like, we're going to have to modify your paperwork a little bit. And I think it was in Indiana because it's legal to record a conversation. He took a recorder in with him
Really?
to catch his boss on tape saying, we're going to modify your paperwork a little bit. And he was like, I think it's pretty solid the way that I wrote it, but I work by the hour, so you do what you got to do then. And they pretty much wrote it off so that I don't believe Amazon anything negative came of it from them. But the injury rates are through the roof compared to other shops. The just misinformation people have about safety, and it's really spooky. But I mean, back in your day, I think that was something that was a testament to, well, just don't be dumb because it's very dangerous what we do.
Survival of the fittest,
Yeah.
The stupid guy was out quick enough. But even simple stuff. Now, we have this great procedure for locking out our machines now. Well, the way I grew up was your shop rag, if you threw that over the turret of the machine,
That was your lockout tag out.
no one touched the machine till you find out how come.
Yeah.
Don't. You were, grinding a tool or something and it wasn't in. You throw that rag over the top. No one ever touched it. Marty, what's wrong with this one? Oh, I was grinding the tool. Okay, cool. And on you go. And now you have this elaborate procedure and write-ups, and you got to unlock that box to get the keys and go do the... Come on.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it didn't matter with leather belts anyway. And if the machine wasn't running, you knocked the belt off the pulley. Couple reasons. One, shouldn't be running. Number two, no one's going to accidentally turn it on if there's no power to it.
Yeah.
Same principle. There's nothing going to the...
Yeah, I have a healthy respect, I think, for electricity. I think both you and I do.
Well, yeah, I mean, I might get a little careless about it, like if I'm going to work on a outlet there in the wall.
Yeah.
And most houses, this stuff isn't labeled anywhere near right. So sometimes I'll just short it out and blow the circuit breaker and say, now I know which one it is. It's off.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're good. We know that one's dead. Screwdriver might have a little mark on it or something, but
I know. So, what else you got going today? I know I got to get milk for the baby. She pretty much woke up in a fit, and there was no milk in the fridge. So,
wow, really? I still don't like to run out of milk. I still have a glass. I still have my glass of milk every night.
Yeah.
That's how come I keep so frisky.
Jeez. Well, I mean, you got
just
your
habit. I mean, by 7 in the morning, I've had all the coffee I ever want.
Yeah.
Spend the rest of the day getting rid of it.
Claudio's like, I thought he only goes to breakfast on Saturdays. It's like, I think weekends he goes to breakfast.
No, just Sundays.
Oh, really? Just Sundays?
Only Sunday morning.
Oh, okay.
And Mayor's, they actually aren't open yet.
Yeah, I told him you're on that VIP list.
Yeah. Well, they're smart enough not to turn down a customer. And really, when I started going, they were open at that hour.
Oh, okay.
But they changed their hours, and there was, at the time, a handful of us that said, no, this is when we're coming in. And
they just keep the door open.
Moved, died off, and whatever. Now there's me and one other guy. Occasionally somebody else, but,
Yeah.
And then we need to transport this thing.
Yeah, we'll get that loaded for you.
Then I got to scurry over and see if this guy's working today, so maybe I can get my poor car out of being a hostage.
Yeah.
I guess it goes back to if you want it done right.
There you go.
But I wasn't interested in working under the dashboard and twisting around and all. I'm not quite as flexible as maybe I used to be.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming by and being on. You got Steve. He's all salty. So Ramon won't let me on his podcast. I said, what are you talking about? I've given you all kinds of invitations.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's like, well, Marty's going to be on. I was like, well, I've given Marty the same amount of invitations, and he's finally taken me up on it. So,
Yeah, I know what we've been talking about this months.
yeah.
You know,
Well, it's also
and I'll be honest with you. I was leery was knowing
the internet.
not just that, but your generation and down isn't going to be something listened to, or is it a joke?
Yeah.
You know, is this going to be another opportunity to say ha ha ha?
Yeah. Maybe when Steve's on it will be, but
Well, I mean, there's a couple people in the shop that I've told Steve this before too, that if I'm going to try teaching you something, that I will try to teach you something. And beyond that, I'm going to try to teach you how come, why you would hold that tool there. This group I'm talking about, I feel, is smart enough to take that and later on apply it to something that may have nothing to do with it, except the underlying principle is the same.
yeah.
And those people, I feel, are smart enough to do that. I won't name all the names, but you already know who that is.
Yeah, yeah.
And then other guys, especially when I was down south, I'd say, okay, push the green button, and if something goes wrong, push that red one. That's all you need to know
bare
about
minimums.
it.
Yeah.
And all you need to know about it, it's
Yeah, you'll land feet first if you do that.
let's see.
Well, right on, Marty. I'm gonna go ahead and cut it here.
Wrap this up.
Yeah, we'll get you loaded and be on our way.
Well, we'll see if we can load. I love my